Hi, I'm Rich Gallagher. Welcome to the Sweetwater Minute. This week on the Sweetwater Minute, we are joined by Alairex h.a.l.o. Thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you taking the time to visit us here at Sweetwater.
I'd love to be here at Sweetwater. It's a great experience.
Yeah, thank you. So you are well known in the industry for making great bass products, great guitar products. You've been doing that for a number of years, and like I said, you're very well known in the industry for doing that. But you've come out with a brand new product and came here today to Sweetwater to demonstrate this for us. And tell us what we have here.
Well, this product, I'm very excited about it, and this is the new brand I have is Alairex, and we call this the h.a.l.o. Overdrive pedal. And h.a.l.o. stands for Harmonic Amp Like Overdrive. The name was actually coined after the product was designed, and Tom Wheeler, who was of Guitar Player magazine fame, came up with the name. We liked it so much we kept it. So it's a two-channel overdrive that's kind of unique in many ways. One of the challenges as a designer in coming up with an overdrive pedal, particularly one that we're trying to get to mimic an amp, is to have something that really responds to your pick hand and right hand. That's what, at first as a player, I started playing 40 years ago when I was a kid. A good tube amp to me is something that you really feel connected to,
right,
in terms of how it responds.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of and I was never a pedal guy. I hated pedals. I always just modified my amps. But a lot of the stuff previously that I've tried always felt like I was a disconnect. The sound might have been close and sometimes
right,
good. There was that disconnect between what I felt the amp should be responding to and what ideally should happen. So this, that was one engineering challenge of this, and I'm very happy with the way it came out.
Right. Now you designed this to basically work with a clean amplifier, but it has two channels, so
That's
you can
correct.
Still have kind of a crunch tone or a dirty rhythm
Right.
sound, and then also have a more saturated lead kind of sound. Are the two channels identical, or is there a difference between the two
No,
channels?
they're voiced differently, not only in frequency response, but also in where the gain, the thresholds are set. Channel 1 kind of goes from, you could have it set pretty clean, to, I would call it a fairly saturated level, and then channel 2 takes up where channel 2 leaves off on 10 and goes beyond that.
Right.
So you could have three completely different sounds, and that is one of the ideas, to have a clean setting amp and turn it into a channel switcher.
Right. Now, one of the challenges that I've always had using pedals with a clean amp like that is getting a kind of semi-distorted sound. It just never sounds convincing to me. It always sounds kind of too hairy or it just doesn't quite respond right. Could you give us a little bit of a demonstration of what the clean sound is on the amp, and then show us how the channel 1 really responds when you're doing those kind of broken up sounds?
All right, and the equipment here is a stock Fender Custom Shop Telly and a Princeton reverb, so nothing fancy here. This is the reference sound, just a clean channel. So I'm going to engage the pedal into channel 1, and I'm just going to play the same thing and then vary my attack. That's just a hair of overdrive there. I'm going to pick that a little bit harder on the same note, right? And that's what you were talking about. That's a really hard sound to engineer and get it right, because it's threshold-wise voltages, threshold voltages. That's right on the edge of going between what we could call clipping and saturation.
Right.
Typically, that sounds fake, or somehow it goes into that threshold too quickly.
Right.
Really quick, like pedals would do that. You know, just have them. They'll be kind of on and off.
Yeah, the dynamic response is in there, and obviously from what you're showing there, I mean, it has great dynamic response. I can tell the touch is really natural to you.
And I'll just dial a little bit more and show you some other stuff here. I'm thinking in reverse. Okay. We tune because we care. Okay. So you can actually mimic channel switching, or whatever we used to call in the old days, simply by picking harder, and of course using your volume control adds another dimension where you really don't have to, even before we get into all the switching, we could just do a lot with the guitar and your hand.
Right. So you can really have a very dynamic rhythm sound set up that'll take you from clean, almost like a single channel amp.
Absolutely.
Where you're really controlling it all with your touch and the volume knob.
Right.
But then when you switch over to channel 2, you've got all the sustain and all of the, the saturation that you want for your leads.
And the sustain is one of the things that's pretty unique about this. And I'm going to switch into channel 2, right? Here we go. Oh, wrong way. I could keep that going. And we're at very conversational levels here, so that's impressive, particularly with the Tele and this amp. And the thing, some really good tube amps can give you that. This is consistent from unit to unit. You don't have to worry about if you got the right preamp tubes, if the amp, whatever. I used to listen to like Jeff Beck, and sometimes he'd go up to near the amp, and sometimes it would do that, and sometimes it wouldn't. And I can do that on call, all the time. So it's a very predictable sound and gives you that kind of level. I'll do that, something like that again. Really. It's good for those pinch harmonics as well. Everything pops out easily.
Right. Now, what is impressive about that to me, sitting here listening to it in the room, is that it doesn't sound compressed. It's like a great tube amp where you can have the gain, but it still doesn't get all compressed and I call it mosquito-y sounding. It still retains the dynamics. It's still a nice, rich, fat sound.
Another challenge. The thing, again, when I thought about this pedal, I wanted something, because I would go to different places, and my playing career, I'm sort of like retired from playing, but I would go to places like church bands and stuff, and they'd have an amp, like a twin or something, and it'd get a nasty sound if it was too piercing with JBLs, and I wanted something I could take. So this is the kind of thing that, think of it more like a 2-channel device that'll give you a great 3-channel amp. So not just an effect box that you could plug in.
Right.
So really and the name of the h.a.l.o name is really appropriate, because it really delivers the sound like a great amp. And the harmonic content. I'll play something a more complex chord, right? Okay. And the reason I was pointing there, you could hear the fundamental and then the complex harmonics. And typically with overdrive pedals, if you play anything more than 2 notes together, like if you play more than root and a fifth, the thing will really gets very weird sounding, because it can't handle the complexity of all those overtones. So that's another challenge.
Turns into mud or to mush.
Turns into mud, and if you play any styles that require that, you can play virtually anything with kind of different gains and still express it, and the notes will come out. It's not, you don't have to limit yourself to just playing root 5.
Right. Well, so it doesn't. The sound of the amp, if you will, isn't restricting what you can play.
And the other cool thing that's really important to me is that it doesn't change the sound of the guitar. It sounds like a Telecaster overdriven, right? There's no disguising that that's a Tele through an overdriven amp sound. It doesn't take each guitar and make it sound the same and uniform, which happens with a lot of high gain stuff, particularly in really high gain.
Right. Now you've also given some extra tailoring or shaping controls here. Can you give us a brief rundown of what those do? Sure.
From your left to this way, this switch here is called saturation, and what that does is add another, correction, I'm thinking backwards. This is the shape switch, and that gives you either a symmetric clipping, which is a real kind of open sound. And then for an even more complex thing, I like to go to the asymmetric clipping. This is probably, if there's some setting that's really harmonically complex, this would be it. Those are the real high pitch harmonics coming through. And then the center setting is simply the clipping circuitry is disconnected from the gain, and basically the distortion and saturation is set by the power supply voltage. So this is voltage dependent. With a 9-volt battery, it'll clip a little bit differently in that setting as opposed to an 18-volt power supply.
Interesting.
And it's good for people who like just that cusp, or what I call just the cusp of whether you're getting to distortion or clean.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving from there, then we have the saturation switch, which is also a 3-position switch, and that adds another layer of post-gain saturation, and you could assign that to both channels. You could have it on neither channel, or simply assign it to channel 2. So you could have a bunch of different complex stuff. EQ-wise, you have 4 EQ controls. The middle one is the conventionally labeled tone, which is actually treble. But the nomenclature tone seems to be universally accepted for pedals, so we did it that way.
Right.
And then above that, we have 3 little controls that control your bass, which is about 100 hertz, contour, which is mid-range at about 500, and presence, which is the higher mids at about 1,000 hertz. And with combination of all these controls, you can really dial in a lot of stuff. A lot of guys like to use, in the heavy distortion, they like to scoop out the mids. We'll kind of do that here. And you could also just boost the mids and do whatever you like with it. Really flexible EQ. When the unit is bypassed, it does not alter the sound of the guitar at all. That's the last thing, of course, you want to do is load down your pickups and change your pristine, beautiful guitar sound to something else. So when it's out, you don't know it's in. However, you still have the ability to drive very long cables because it is a low impedance buffered output.
Right, nice,
Yeah.
nice. Now the output is also, you don't really talk about it as being compensated, but you can plug that straight into your DAW or to a mixer or a direct box and run it direct.
Yeah, this has been, a lot of guys are doing this lately and trying to, reports have been very positive. We're probably going to do either an option or another, maybe a studio enhanced model with some suffix on it that'll have a balanced output and with true, line level output.
Right.
But it does work very well for that because, again, it's a fairly complex circuit that does shape both the high and low, so it'll give you the appropriate response through going direct like that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Alex, it's a very impressive pedal.
Well, thank you so much.
Really enjoyed checking it
it
out, and I enjoyed your playing as well. Very nice. Call your Sweetwater sales engineer if you have any further questions on this, but let's have Alex play us out. Why don't you show us what this pedal can do?
Yeah, we'll try to do something here. Okay.